Welcome to Pod and Deliver. Today, in Movies That Get Teenagers Right, we are talking the 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey,
Fast Times at Ridgemont High was directed by Amy Heckerling in collaboration with Cameron Crowe, starring Sean Penn, Phoebe Cates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Judge Reinhold. It is a movie that has wonderful performances, and I think it gets teenagers right. First of all, I think of this as Judge Reinhold. It's his story and Jennifer Jason Leigh's story, who plays his sister. It's actually probably Jennifer Jason Leigh's story, but I want to start with Judge Reinhold because you sense the humiliation in his character over and over again. So let's take a step back, everybody. Think back to when you were a teenager. This week is about getting teenagers right. Judge Reinhold plays a kid who works at fast food restaurants, who has to put on the garb. He has to walk through living rooms, places where girls he might like are staring at him, wearing a pirate's hat. And he has to deal with that humiliation, but he never gives up. He never stops working hard. This is the world of a teenager, at least the world that I remembered in the 1980s. So I guess you could look at this as teenagers from the 1980s getting it right. I think it's right. But I think the movie is centered around Jennifer Jason Leigh. And I didn't know that. I haven't seen this movie in years. I didn't remember that. Because when you think about Fast Times, you think about Sean Penn. And his performance is great. But, oh yeah, this is Jennifer Jason Leigh's story. And you really are impressed by her world and her desire for acceptance. So really, if you look at these two characters, Jennifer Jason Leigh and Judge Reinhold, like I said, they're brother and sister in this. They are both seeking acceptance in two different ways. In Jennifer Jason Leigh's case, it's about love. It's about who will love her, who will take care of her, who will spend time with her and talk to her. And it seems like she's so hungry for that you follow her story and it's very meaningful. And part of the power of this film is some of these teenagers, including her, make very bad mistakes, but they have to pay for those mistakes. And you sense that. You really feel that. They don't candy coat it too much. You know how I feel about the videos of the 80s, how they turn them into songs. I'm not a fan of that. And I'm also not a fan of the way they don't appreciate what they have. In a film directed by Amy Heckerling of Clueless, and this is a Cameron Crowe film. This is not Porky's. You don't need women taking off their blouses like they're doing. And I almost feel like this is a producer's choice where they say, well, we need to have this and that. We need to show this. This is the early 80s. And it really it didn't do much for the film. And they lost their way when they did that. I will say, though, I will recommend the film because there's so many good moments there. And overall, of course, we have to talk about Sean Penn. His performance is really important to the overall success of the film because you have to remember he is not a bad kid. Even though the teacher kind of portrays him or addresses him as if he's a negative impact into this film, into this classroom, he's really funny, actually. And overall, does the movie get teenagers right? I think so, at least for that era. What are your thoughts?
well, to be fair, I think even in this era, because I think the one thing that I didn't like, and you should express it regarding they didn't have to show the, girls taking off their blouses or whatever, right? That just didn't. There was no need there. But the whole aspect of what they're going through and the problems they're facing. There's not too many adults in this film except one teacher, and you see that these kids need some guidance. They need some help. Even the two young ladies, Phoebe Cates and you said, which is true, Jennifer Jason Leigh. This is her story. They're talking throughout the film, and young guys, they don't know. We don't always know what young girls are when you're that age. You don't know what young girls are talking about, but they're probably talking about guys, right? and that's what they do, and even about sex, and you could tell they both have no clue what sex is all about, and they're navigating through it and making mistakes and trying to feel like they know it all, and they don't. Phoebe Cates has no clue either. And so you see that and you say, well, this is real. And that's why I think it's real today as well. Because I think kids think they know it all. And they're trying to be adults and they just can't, they're not there yet. They're making mistakes still. And that's just where hopefully they have an adult in their life to help them out. I will want to talk about that adult, Mr. Hand, the teacher, with Spicoli. Spicoli and him have a couple interactions where Hand, who's played by Ray Watson, right?
Ray Walston.
Walston, I'm sorry, who was in My Favorite Martian when we were kids. We watched that, right? And so they have these interactions, and it's not always positive, or he's kicking him out of class, or one famous scene where Spicoli orders some pizza, and then Mr. Hand lets everyone else eat the pizza, and Spicoli's like, "What's going on, dude?" But you see in his face, like he's looking at it, like he's studying, like, wait a minute, something's going on. He's trying to figure out the teacher. The teacher is trying to figure him out. And then the most sweet ending, I believe, when they're at his house, Mr. Hand goes to his house and visits him and talks to him, says, hey, you wasted all these hours. I'm going to sit here. And you're going to, regain them back. And you could see that they start having a good dialogue. And he really cares about Spicoli. And I'm like, I love it. I never saw that before. I go, he really cares about this kid. And
it really brought the Ray Walston, the Mr. Hand character, it really kind of brought him some kind of, the word I'm looking for is he redeemed himself.
He did.
It brought him redemption, because up to that point, we started to hate Mr. Hand.
Yeah.
When he ate his pizza, like you said, when he ate his pizza, that was really bad. That was really negative, of course. And he called him out. But he did the one thing you should do and care about your kid. Yeah. And he did that. And he visited, like you said.
Yeah, I thought that was so lovely. Such a nice, end to that story.
I agree with that. And I also wanted to point out something you did and just underscore.
Sure.
The idea that what makes this film so interesting, and it's different from the others, is there's no adults in this film, except for Mr. Hand. But Mr. Hand is not giving the perspective of an adult. He's just a character in the film. You just see the perspective of teenagers throughout the whole film. It's very different if you see that, and you really think like a teenager when you're watching it. And I want to also point out a real well-directed scene between, I don't know these characters, these actors, their names. I just know them as Ratner and Damone.
Oh, yeah.
And Damone has done something very awful, and basically stealing his friend's girlfriend. And there's a scene in the locker room where they're about to get into a fight. And a poor writer or director would have cast Damone as the ultimate villain because of what he did. But you don't feel that when you watch that scene. You also feel the pain of Damone. You feel both of their pain. You understand why Damone did what he did. It was wrong. But you look at both of these characters and you care about both of them. You don't hate Damone at the end. And I really appreciated the intelligence of that scene. And you walk away from the film thinking, people would still be talking about this film as maybe a great film if they just did some editing tricks, maybe, because it's really well done, well written, well acted.
I would say that when you say well acted, so correct, because those actors, you just see their, even Sean Penn's face, their face says so much, and you could feel it. You're like, they know they do wrong, or they know they're messing up. Like in that scene where he's messing with his friend's girl, right? And he knows he messed up his friend. and that's what makes it different, is that there's consequence, and where in other films it's just for there's no, you don't see that, and here you see that, and I think that's what makes this movie special, and I think that it's still relevant today.
So does Fast Times at Ridgemont High get teens right, Jacob?
Oh, I think it does, and I think the one part that you were a little you're hesitant was because this young Reinhold, he's working hard. Not that teenagers don't do that today, but sometimes I think there's a little more helicopter parents today, and I could include myself in that, and where we don't allow kids to kind of grow up, and we kind of smother them. And I think back then we didn't get that. We were figuring it out. We were trying to get a job, get gas money, and so.
Yeah.
But besides that piece, I think it gets it right.
By the way, that Judge Reinhold character has a pretty nice ending. At the end, he works his way and becomes a very effective worker at what he does. I'll just leave it at that. It was a pretty funny ending involving
It's
him.
a great way to end it. Yeah. Very
so
cool.
it is a comedy, so they have to remember that one.
That's why he has Spicoli.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in Movies That Get It Teenagers Right. Bye-bye.